Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Dr. Tamara Huff, and I am a board-certified orthopedic surgeon and member of the Executive Steering Committee of Movement is Life. Movement is Life is a multidisciplinary coalition seeking to eliminate racial, ethnic, and gender disparities in musculoskeletal healthcare by promoting physical mobility, patient and provider education, and political activism to improve the quality of life among African American, Hispanic, and rural women. Movement is Life has focused on health disparities and the social determinants of health, such as structural racism, unconscious bias, and the wealth gap since its founding over 10 years ago. With the COVID-19 pandemic, the social justice protests over police violence, and the political and social upheaval surrounding our nation's elections have resulted in 12 months of utter chaos. This chaos has caused many of us to feel drained and disillusioned. Today, we are joined by a woman whose mission is to help drained and disillusioned individuals of all backgrounds to move into a happier, healthier, and more productive state. But before I introduce our speaker today, we would like to know a little bit about you, our audience. We have a brief one-question poll asking what best represents your current career situation. Are you a healthcare professional, corporate executive? Are you in education or teacher or in administration? Are you a community organizer, religious leader, a student, an entrepreneur, unemployed, or other? Please take a moment to check out that poll. We love to get to know our audience. And just as we imagine that you all are all from various different backgrounds, so are our members of our steering committee for Movement is Life. Our committee includes orthopedic surgeons such as myself, family practice physicians, nurses, physician assistants, religious leaders, health insurance company executives, physical and occupational therapists, researchers, political insiders, legal professionals, and many, many others. So by far, we have mostly healthcare professionals, but we'll tailor this to everyone. Also too, we encourage you to type your questions into the chat box during and after the presentation. We are looking forward to a robust discussion today, and any questions that we are unable to address will be considered for future podcasts, webinars, and other events. So, let's get to the important part. Let's introduce today's speaker. Dr. Toni Haley, better known as Dr. Toni, is a best-selling author and TEDx speaker. As a certified executive coach for high-performing professionals, Dr. Toni is highly sought after for her 25 years of experience in healthcare, wellness, relationships, and finance. As founder of Soar to Excellence Coaching, her organization's proven systems help individuals overcome setbacks to reach their personal and professional potential. Dr. Toni is joining Movement is Life today for an open dialogue about turning the overwhelm of the current crisis into an opportunity to thrive. I will now turn it over to our speaker and my good friend, Dr. Toni Haley.
Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I'd like to thank Movement is Life, obviously Dr. Huff, my moderator, and also Zimmer Biomed for this opportunity at the top of a new year for us to talk about the future. There is one. I have a question for you to ponder. Why does chaos often lead to change. How do you get in your own way when you're trying to get to the other side? Can you think of anything? What about all the ways that you can get over there to where you really want to be? Really win, no matter what comes your way. I want you to take a moment, a little journey with me, and imagine, close your eyes, imagine thriving beyond the chaos, beyond overwhelm, overwork, endless commitments, your to-do list. It doesn't have any Zoom meetings. Oh, remember that? You walk without all the rules. You travel without restrictions. When you see a friend, you can see their smile. You greet each other with a warm hug. You take a walk. You meet after work. Remember Starbucks? Remember just hanging out, reading a book? Got your laptop? Things were normal back then. You could just meet after work for drinks, hang out, go on a date. You could actually buy a planner at the top of a year and put things in it that actually happen. You could dance in your Zumba class, high five at the game, cheer the kids on, have a beer at that same game in the neighborhood with your friends, with the community. Birthdays, celebrations. No more of those drive-by ones on the lawn, in your car, you're driving, waving by. Drive-bys used to mean something else. And now the drive-by could be a baby shower or a congratulatory wave from the family, right? No more of that. Graduations, no, they would be full of proud parents, proud grandparents. When you turn on the TV, remember that? We used to complain about the weather and the news, but it was mundane and it was a good thing. Remember that? It wasn't full of police brutality. It wasn't people storming the Capitol, dominating your news feed. You would be marked safe from marches, protests, rallies, canceled meetings. You'd actually need to know what the weather was because you would put on pants and go outside instead of wearing those pajama bottoms in this meeting. Some of you are, I promise. You'd actually be in a commute. Remember that? You'd sit in traffic and complain about it. Your summers, unrestricted. On the other side, we'd have the kids back in school, play dates were on, daycares open. You could actually plan a trip in anticipation of all the joy and fun you'd have when you get there. No worries. We wouldn't be in all these pesky seminars. No, they're important right now, but you wouldn't have to attend so many because this is the future. Healthcare disparities, wealth gap, disparate numbers of Blacks and Hispanics and other underserved communities and populations. They wouldn't have to worry about dying from COVID at a higher rate. Our loved ones safe at home, safe at the supermarket. You could bird watch and things don't go south. You could be in your own car or in your own gated community and everything would be fine. You could lay in bed and no one would shoot you. Go figure. That'd be great. Wouldn't that be nice? You could actually Live in any zip code you want in this utopia, the future. Any zip code you like. And the risk for your health, for your wealth, it would be the same. You could name your kids what you want to. Your religion wouldn't matter. Your race alone would not be a barrier. How you look, where you go, wouldn't be a problem. And I'll be honest with you, many of us, we don't realize until a barrier comes to us personally. We talk about the social determinants of health. I say that with air quotes because we know how it is in these meetings. We talk about the facts and the stats. That's not what we're doing today. Remember all of those social determinants, the safe community, the housing, the transportation. We talk about how violence plays a role, education plays a role, your opportunities on the other side, the jobs that you can expect a call back from, the income that you can count on, access to the right foods and physical activities wouldn't depend on all these outside factors. Flint would have clean water. Wow, how about that? That's the future, right? Literacy wouldn't come up, language wouldn't be a barrier. I used to believe that if we dealt with some of those determinants of health, that we would all be okay. And a lot of my volunteer time and work was focused on organizations just like this one, where I would come in and help pitch in on those issues. And when you know better, you do better. You strive to beat the odds. I know I didn't go to school, and I know you didn't either, for half your life or for years on end to just work a job. You were trying to make a difference. I tried more than one industry, if you can believe that. Finance, corporate life, doctor life. It was all the same. Listen, I even became a personal trainer thinking, well, maybe if I dig in, I have 6,500 miles on my Peloton. I was serious. I thought I had made it until it happened to me. I was following the rules. Isn't that what we do? We follow the rules and we show up. So I made the appointments and followed the protocol. You know how we do. I used my insurance. Sounds like it's a misnomer. But yeah, in the real world, outside of that utopia, I tried to use my insurance card. They should name it something else. Just like healthcare. Maybe they should name it something else because I didn't see any insurance and I didn't get any care. First, it was the mammogram. Oh, no, ma'am, we had to shut it down. What do you mean? Well, with COVID, we're just going to shut it down and wait. For what? What are we waiting for? What do you mean? Finally, I got my mammogram. Whew. Lucky me. Then it was my women's health exam. Had to wait for that. Wasn't treated very well at the door. There wasn't even a sign on the door with my doctor's name on it, which is a little scary because the first thing we're supposed to do is label everything so people can know where to go and what to do. There shouldn't be the barrier. But when I inquired, the staff informed me we've had tons of complaints, but nothing seems to change. And I know about those health screenings. I know they save lives. I've described my symptoms at this point to 3 people in the healthcare system, including my physician, not my personal physician, but a physician, a nurse or 2, and they downplayed it. Well, at your age, with your risk factors, everything should be just fine. because it's the future, right? But my physician colleagues and friends who aren't the majority, all their communities are saying, I have to go in person with my friends and family so they can get care. You know, what we thought was standard with your insurance card. Here we are in the real world, higher risk for so many of us of COVID death, cancer death, police brutality, and you name it. I had two specialists tell me, oh, a lot of times we don't get the people coming in until too late to really make a difference. So they really suffer. Doesn't matter what it is. But most of these things we're talking about, they're preventable, treatable, or beatable, as one of the guests on my show said. All that education and preparation, still never thought it would happen to me. But there I was in a surgical gown trying to finally get that colonoscopy. Finally, they listened to me. I had insurance, I had all the things checked off, had symptoms. Nobody said a word. They told me, you don't need to be here. And I walked in and the surgeon said, how did you get here? You don't need to be here. I didn't look like someone they thought should be in the room. But since you prep for 2 days, we'll do it anyway. Have you ever done a colonoscopy prep? Listen, it's a treat. It's a treat. Clear liquids and so rules, and eventually you get in there. But I wasn't treated very well. 5 people stuck me. A few people introduced themselves to me. Personal information flying all around like I don't exist. I was invisible, but I was right in plain sight. When they finally wheeled me back for my health care, they were joking and laughing as if I wasn't even on the table. Before they pushed those medications, I said, oh, by the way, everyone, I'm a licensed physician and surgeon in the state of South Carolina. You're on notice. You could hear a pin drop in that very loud room after that. Chaos to quiet in 1 minute flat. Imagine my surprise when the letter came in the mail later on and the surgeon said, oh, by the way, we removed a precancerous lesion from you, and lucky you, you won't get cancer, even though you begged us for the treatment, the intervention, because it's preventable or treatable and definitely beatable before it becomes a cancer. So we forgot about that one pesky social determinant of health, discrimination, bias, right? You don't know you're doing it. They didn't realize maybe that they were doing it until I said who I was. Isn't that interesting? The CDC says there are many discrimination checkboxes, the isms, right? Ageism, sexism, other types of disability, pregnancy. Apparently, that's a problem depending on what you do for a living. They don't want you out of work. And if you complain, apparently there's a retaliation one, a reprisal, they call it. Race, color, gender, sexual harassment, all of these are part of the CDC's list of ways for you to end up discriminated against. And all of these can affect us all. In 2013, a young lady decided to drive down the wrong way and hit the wrong pole in front of the Capitol. She was shot dead, and her child was in the back of the car. Young dental hygienist. She thought she had overcome, right? She'd gone to school. She was following most of the rules until that day. But didn't we just storm the Capitol and lots of people made it? She didn't. And what happens to her child? Listen, I'm not here to bring you down. I'm here to bring you up, but we got to have an honest conversation. These stories aren't that unusual. They're so common that the stats don't mean anything most of the time because those reports don't add up. The truth is a different story. But I believe we have a choice. We have a choice to move towards a standard of care. New Zealand's open. They had the pandemic come their way. Australia, back open. Maybe the US needs to learn to be more open in more ways than one. Maybe we need to be open to the idea that change is inevitable anyway, and progress can follow closely behind the crisis that we're facing, both in the past and right here that we're living in right now. I'm so proud of you for being here. We have to be intentional, though, in setting those standards and making those changes. And I'm here today to shed some light on how we can create an opportunity from these crises, from these isms. We're going to have to disrupt so we can win and rise. As a physician and a founder of Sort of Excellence Coaching, I am here to inspire you to take on your legacy. That's what this is. No, we're not just trying to get through the day. We want to go beyond today and thrive. Today, we're going to talk about how we got here, what's holding us back, and what we can do about it. Take a look. When you see this, some people get excited. It's called an amusement park for a reason, right? And some people see this and say, no way will you get me to say that this is a good idea. Absolutely not. Overwhelmed. You look at that and you can become overwhelmed, right? Some of us are living the reality like a roller coaster that we're in right now. We are struggling to get our new routine together. We're struggling to figure out what is the best way to approach a situation that just keeps changing. By the time you get yourself situated, bam, here we are again. Something new is coming your way. It's just not fair. Frankly, it's just not fair. And you're working so hard, you can barely keep up, and it's starting to become a problem. So what do? You say, oh, heck, let's forget about the screen time. We've got enough people in this room who know what I'm talking about. You used to be so good about the screen time. We used to be so good about doing the right thing with the kids and even our own bedtime routine. You know about those lights and you know what it does to you. But frankly, we're so overwhelmed. We're in survival mode. And it's been a very long year of roller coaster riding, and we're still not out of the woods yet. So what has happened? The screen time's doubled in the past 20 years. This is not a good thing because we want to move more, right? It's not happening. Remember that TV dinner? I'm telling my age, but when the invention of the TV dinner was a whole thing, we're still double the TV time and screen time. It's a slippery slope. So we might be spending a little more time together, but what kind of quality is in that time? And we procrastinate. We procrastinate. So we're burned out from working. We're emotionally exhausted. We're not even sure if what we're doing is making a difference, and we're not sure we're making progress at all. It's a difficult situation to find yourself in, and the statistics have gone through the roof for domestic violence. We're in a crisis, and we've got to figure out how to stop avoiding the elephant in the room, stop avoiding some of the difficult conversations, and start making a new plan. You keep setting goals. I'm not saying you're not ambitious. Every year you try again and you make a vision board. You make a resolution or 5. Ever tried to lose weight? Stop smoking, start moving. You start off strong and then bloop, we fall off. This is normal. But honestly, we're getting to the point where we're going to have to do something. Look at this change curve. We don't like change, but things are coming at us so fast. We're going to have to accept it at this point. It's a good idea anyway. We start off in denial. We're frustrated and angry. And in 2021, I challenge us to really look at the next step of exploring for solutions and acceptance of where we are. Notice it says thinking about the future, but you already know how I am going to ask you. I see a smile of a certain person who understands that when I say thinking, something different will follow, right? Let's talk about the fact that most of us are a little fragile when people call us out. We're a little fragile. One of my friends, who's a corporate woman, very successful, she was reading a bedtime story with her son, and they were having a nice routine, right? She thought she was doing something. She put the fires out. She came home on time, dinner with the family, tuck in time. She barely had time to take her shoes off and just wash her hands and maybe get settled a little bit. Her 4-year-old son looked her in the eye and said, "Mommy, where do you live?" Just when you think you're making progress, the truth hits you like a brick. She was devastated because she just didn't know where it came from. But the bedtime routine was about all she was able to do. She's gone before the kids get up. Her husband, he luckily was working from home a lot. They had some family members nearby helping out with some of the other chores and tasks. So her bedtime routine was their thing. And she thought she was doing a great job. But her own 4-year-old said, "Mommy, where's your house?" That's a shocker, isn't it? So sometimes we don't even realize. And you could get defensive. You could get defensive, right? Sometimes it's fragility, right? Sometimes we're so shocked, we go into denial mode, or we get frustrated and lash out at each other. Maybe we don't hear each other well. Maybe we don't realize the root cause is different. It's not a judgment of you, but the reality may be a little scary for some of us. Yeah. So when a 4-year-old tells you to get it together and move on and start exploring new ways to cope, it's a good idea, maybe. Let's talk about what that could look like. This is managed change. And I only want to give you a visual for a moment because I think it's important for us to realize that that word on the left, that impact, is why it's worth it. You don't want 4-year-olds telling you, try it again. The yellow line is the goal. We want positive impact and we want it now. We want it soon. If we don't manage our expectations, if we don't hold and check our bias, if we don't get past being defensive, if we don't acknowledge that some of us have a lot of privilege, including myself, and it still might not be enough, and there's some policy level change that needs to happen, some systemic change that needs to happen, and some structural change that needs to happen, we're not going to manage very well. And the change we're looking for, change will come, but the one we're looking for, it may not come fast enough for us, if you will. So all those problems that we talked about, all those isms that we talked about, some of us pretend to care. We pretend to care. We call that we call that performative allyship. We say we understand, but we don't do much. We say the right things. We read about it, but it's not something we have a responsibility to change. Okay? If we want to move forward, if we want to close those gaps we discussed, it's important. And I'll give you some homework, don't worry. We'll talk about some of the things I would recommend we do. But one thing we've got to do instead of being angry, frustrated, and reactive is start to put on a different lens. Look at things a little differently. In this picture, it's an example. It represents, if you will, a crude example, a drawing of what happens when we don't check our lens. We don't question what we see. We don't look at the root cause of what's going on, what's really going on, and we start to judge. We see somebody being crushed, but they're still reaching. We see somebody reaching, but being bitten. And there's a perilous fall on the other side of the cliff. Yeah? What happens when we won't acknowledge all three? Everybody's in peril here. We're in trouble. All of us are in trouble. And if these two don't get some help, I have a feeling they're not going to make it. They're not going to make it. We've got to work together to see things as they are. And maybe we have to have a little bit more empathy. Ask the right questions and pay attention to what people are saying to you about their lived experience. It's theirs. You don't have to agree, but it'd be nice if you cared. Don't ask if you don't care. So empathy. This is homework. I'm a coach. I love to give you a little homework. So if you have a notebook, I have a couple things I'd like to start to put into the story for you because I want you to walk away with some of that impact on your mind. Okay. So empathy, some attention to what's going on around you that may not quite affect you, but the idea that that lady could just pull herself up by the bootstraps, what's her problem? She's not trying very hard. I don't understand why this lady just can't get where I am up there. And also, she's down there thinking he's got it made, right? How many of us think that we know, and then we find out the harsh reality and the harsh truth of it all later on? Happens to us. Come on, be honest. We're trying to have a good conversation about what really happens when we only put on one lens, right? If I took these glasses right now and popped the lens out, I might be in trouble. Let's not do that. But looking with one lens, looking from one angle or perspective is a dangerous predicament we can find ourselves in. And I'm concerned that perhaps one of the things that's happening is we just aren't looking or we're just not listening to the people who are experiencing trauma. We are all in a different situation, but we're all connected. And years ago, Kaiser Foundation did a study about, I promise no statistics, but this number kind of caught my eye. $161 billion with a B dollars that they calculated, because we know it's more, right? $161 billion that went to things related to just alcohol and drug use. And those people had high ACEs, adverse childhood events, trauma. And I know many of us understand that because of the work you do, because of the listening you've done. A lot of us are very interested in seeing the world change. So I'm not saying we don't know. I'm just reminding us that there's a lot of unquantified numbers and unaddressed problems. But if we turn this thing around, I promise you, we all win, because the community that we live in, we just can't rope it off. We're all connected. Look at these essential workers. You still want that food and that coffee, and you know you do. Good luck without it. Because as busy as you've been, listen, it's not realistic for you to do it all and cook it all and not have someone else perhaps whip up your favorite latte. Sometimes it's like that, okay? And some of us realize that we are the person everyone leans on in the family. So it's very important that we have a little empathy, because it's going to make a difference in the lives of our community and also show us the way forward. We're avoiding looking at our needs too. Yeah. Sometimes we're so caught up in tasks and lists of things to do. I'm guilty of it. And the list of things to do, what happens? Does it really go away? It's never gone. It's never finished. So why do we chase it like this hamster wheel? And I'm going to give you a hint. More time at home or more time away from other activities and hobbies and travel, it did not fix it, and you know it. So I want you to remember that knowing what your needs are and being honest with yourself about the fact that maybe now you need more rest. Maybe now you need to unburden yourself with some of the responsibilities and obligations you've accepted happily in the past. Maybe things are changing for you. Maybe your family dynamics have changed. Your financial picture may be affected in a good or a bad way. Or maybe you just decided that it's time to turn your attention to you. You deserve it, and you take care of so many other people, but it's starting to hurt. It's starting to get heavy, and you're starting to be a little tired, wouldn't you think? So if we get stuck on the left side of that curve and we don't look at acceptance of the reality that we're in and make some adjustments, it may be a little bit difficult to get where we all want to go, and it's closer to the future. Growing up, the Jetsons, oh, it was like that utopia we talked about at the beginning. Wasn't it fabulous? Oh my gosh, my car is flying, my robot's cleaning. We thought we'd be there by 2021. Yes? Not so much. We're not there quite yet. And there's some dangers. There's some dangers because we are not taking control just yet. Maybe we need to make a new list of things to do. And I'd like you to think about what you can control in this pandemic. Think about it. If you're a role model in action, and many of you are leaders in your community, yes? People are looking to you for guidance. And I know you've been busy. I know you have. But I also believe that you need to give yourself some grace and turn inward just for a moment. If you were to decide that you wanted to put down some of those burdens and put down some of those responsibilities, I bet you could build something better, bigger, bolder, that helps even more people and you, as opposed to being frazzled, frustrated, tired of the same old status quo. So many of us are feeling that. So we talked about, let's recap just a little bit because I don't want us to cross over just yet. I want us to remember that when people are in conflict, it's so important to do what? To listen and have empathy and maybe mentor and sponsor. And maybe it's your responsibility to pick up a book and do a little homework, shall we? Because we know you do it when it's your job. And now maybe your job and roles are changing, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about what can go wrong, because it's not fair to talk about the future and not talk about the fact that all those electronics have cords and plugs and batteries, and we can run out of energy. We can run out of power, right? We may feel powerless in this struggle. It's a little bit of a struggle bus trucking down the road. I know you're with me. I know you feel it. I know you know exactly what I'm talking about, because this has gone on and we're just shy of a year. And there were so many things wrong before. So when someone says to you, let's get back to normal, most of us realize that normal wasn't all that awesome. We were overworked, overwhelmed. And then what's new now? Just swap out the reasons we're worried and swap out the to-do list. But I want you to recall in your mind that you have a choice. You don't have to fall head first on a stake and sacrifice everything to win. And many of us have traded time for money. We've traded family for other things. And we thought we had conquered it all and achieved so much. We thought we had conquered those social determinants of health, only to find ourselves martyred, tired, and unappreciated, only to give up vacation days to finish the work, only to be distracted and numbing ourselves. Remember that 161 billion? It's probably a lot of people trying to get over the pain, and they're sitting and thinking and pondering when we need to decide to get moving. But I think we're going to need to help each other to do that if we all want to move forward and get to the other side. Let's take a look at what that could be. What could that be? It could be a new way. Look at this. Look at this. In order for us to have equity, isn't that what this conversation is about? Getting closer and moving the needle little by little, incrementally towards the change that we seek. Some of us are healers here and some of us are leaders, but maybe it's time to change your role for this new way and for us to move forward. Maybe you go from a healer to a disruptor. What about that? We don't always see ourselves this way. We don't always know that it's positive and necessary. But I did ask you to make a list of what you can control. You can control your choices, and you can control where you spend your time, who you spend it with. You chose to spend it here, right? Your energy. These are the limited resources. And your health is irreplaceable and priceless as your number one resource. Let's protect it and be intentional about it, because if we don't take control of where we spend our mental, physical, spiritual energy, our currency, it's like a bank account. Some of us are doing pretty good, but the rest of us are worried about the future because we're connected, all of us. And it's time for us to decide what that looks like in 2021. And that requires us to let go of some old ways. Some of them are just habits, and some of them are a little challenging, and that's fair. But I believe that we're on our way. Your assignment, should you choose to accept. Yes, it's from Mission Impossible. Yes, but no, it's not impossible. We can take control. I have an acronym that I created, and it's called CREATE. CREAT. I'm challenging you today. All those things we discussed, I'm challenging you to connect. First of all, connect. And I know that with all the Zooms and the meetings and electronics, it's hard to want to keep that up. So you don't have to do it one way, but let's connect the dots at least. Let's have an honest understanding that some of us are ready to pitch in and figure this thing out, and we all have to do it together. Because I want to mention one thing to you as a physician. I hear the word herd immunity thrown around quite a bit. That's all of us connected working together. And if you didn't know, herd immunity only happens if you vaccinate. I had an immunologist, an allergist and immunologist on the Dr. Toni live show. And you know what she told me? Estimates are about 80 to 90% of the population that would need to participate. So I have my trusty Band-Aid for my first vaccination. Because guess what? You remember that future you're looking for? That plane you want to get on? The fact that that conference is calling you and those friends and family members, you'd love to have a real holiday meal with them or just meet up at the game? The Super Bowl's on the way. Wow, Super Bowl party with your friends in the stadium. Wouldn't that be great? You work so hard, why not, right? Well, if we don't all connect the dots and get herd immunity, we could be in trouble. So we've got to remember that reflection, the R, reflect. Let's reflect. Sometimes we don't understand why those people are so upset over there. But when we reflect on the past, we remember that there were Tuskegee experiments and treatment was withheld. They weren't so caring at that time, were they? Oh, and then we closed the wealth gap a little bit and they burned it down. Look up Black Wall Street if you're not familiar. We have to reflect on the past so that we can build a better future. So E in your create action plan is to evaluate. What can we do that's a measurable goal? What can we do to measure our goals? A, you already know. Action. You know, a coach is all about action. That's what we do. And that's what you must do. I know a lot of beautiful, smart, intelligent leaders are on this call right now or watching the replay because you're that committed. And I'm proud of you. But if we don't make an action plan, it's just talk and you know it. And this is not a talk show. This is an action platform and an action network. And we need to behave as such, right? So T is time, one of those limited resources. And if I were you, I would expand it out to the resources I mentioned. Your time, your health, right? They're limited. Your energy, some days it's better than others, but the create time for the things that matter and learn to prioritize in order of importance. How many of you have a to-do list that's not in the right order? You do the things you like to do. You do the things you enjoy first. You do the things that may seem easy or quick, but you know the 80-20 rule. 80% of the impact, remember that change graph? 80% of the impact comes from 20% of the choices that you're making. They're high yield, okay? So E is when you empower yourself. And some of us, that means we need to read a little more. Some of us need to get a little bit more engaged, mentoring, sponsoring, inviting someone along, back to that C of connection. Think of it as a circle that goes all the way around. When we create solutions, that is when we win. I want to revisit the Movement is Life mission because it aligns so beautifully with what we're talking about. Because when you create a vision and a mission and an action plan, you're going to go from where you are to where you want to be, or you're at least closer. If you want to decrease disparities of all kinds, all those isms, raise awareness of the impact on quality of life, You might want to do an early intervention. Review the mission. That's almost it verbatim. And I showed you that that's managed change, right? We want to get there quickly, not eventually. The goals of movement is life is to be a catalyst for change. So you're telling me that with my create plan and movement is life's catalyst for change, we should put a banner in the neighborhood and in the office and in whatever room you're Zooming in, because it can get a little sticky. And sometimes it's the car. You're on the go, you're on the move. But being a catalyst for change is one heck of a call to action. And a catalyst is someone or something that speeds the reaction. So being proactive is the way forward. I want you to get energized in your work. Look at that. Get energized with your work group. That's what they're saying to do. They're giving you the best call to action. Create a short-term action plan and make an impact now, because we can't wait for change. So I think you know what you're supposed to do. I think you remember. And I think if you write this down, it applies to everything that's mattering to you today, tomorrow. And if we work together, we'll get there a lot faster. One of the benefits of having a create action plan, being a catalyst for change. What if that was your word for the year? Catalyst. And you decided that you're going to go into every space as the opportunity to win, as the person who takes control, as the person who takes ownership. That is winning. A winner's triangle has a few things. Number one, you. Yes, you. It takes all of us, and each of us has an assignment. Yes, I know I'm not a teacher, but you think so. I want you to have vulnerable as number one. It's difficult to be vulnerable in these really stressful times where you're worried about all those isms, but be vulnerable first and listen with empathy. We talked about this. Number two, I'd like you to be caring about the things you're hearing. Care about it. Figure out how you can get a little action step and assist those around you. I also would like you to take some ownership of your role, because you probably could come up with a creative solution, create plan, hint, hint. And I also know that with us working together, we're not going to blame, point fingers, because we know it doesn't lead to anything wonderful or good. And I don't want to leave you without reminding you that if we don't do it, there can be consequences. There's a recent study from Ohio State. Their football team had asymptomatic and symptomatic COVID positive athletes, football players. These young men, strapping young men running up and down the field, right? When they decided to take a look and measure, we said it had to be a measurable plan, right? You have to look, you have to evaluate, you have to measure. When they put them in an MRI machine and looked at their hearts, those who were symptomatic or asymptomatic with COVID, and it's not a large study, but it's a great picture in your mind. Young people, healthy people, they move all the time. They're the best of the best. They're the brightest, right? They're in college. They found that so many of them had inflammation around their hearts, risk for heart damage that could be permanent. We don't know yet, but it was silent. So many of them were asymptomatic, and yet there was a problem. We have to care. Our best and brightest next move is to make sure that the next generation gets a little further down the road, just a little bit faster. So let's be a catalyst. Let's energize our work group. Let's get those action plans together, and let's make sure we're moving forward. I'm going to read you a quote from Aristotle. Excellence is never an accident. accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution. It represents a wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. So you chose to come today. You chose it. You choose to watch the replay and tell someone about it. You choose to join the movement and the mission here. You choose to be a catalyst for the future legacy you want to build for yourself, for your family, for your community. And you can choose to be that role model in action. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Toni.
Absolutely my pleasure.
So we're going to open it up. There's so many great things that we can take from this. So we're going to open it up to comments and questions. I would like to start off first because I absolutely love how you closed out with the acronym. So before we jump into your create acronym, in the beginning, when you first started talking, Dr. Toni, that story of the 4-year-old asking his mom where you live, while yes, it was funny, but it was actually heartbreaking. And I think many of us here, whether we're caregivers out as our profession, but also caregivers at home with children or with spouses, can you give us maybe 1 or 2 actionable steps that go along with our acronym that we can do to really encourage that aspect of peace and connect better with the people in our own household in this extremely stressful time? So I'll open it up to you for that.
That's a really great question. And luckily, I surround myself with amazing people. So, step 1, surround yourself with amazing people who also are looking for solutions and are pretty bright. Last night, I was getting a wonderful pep talk from my accountability partner. Hint, hint, that A can stand for more than one thing. So before you take action, maybe you have to sit here and think to yourself, where do I want to grow? Where do I want to elevate my life? And family is worth it, right? She's this mom, she loves these kids. What I'd like you to remember is that before you start moving and taking that action, you need to sit down and be accountable for what is and isn't working, and how we may be so exhausted that we're not keeping an account of our time. So my accountability partner, she's a doctor at UCLA Health. She's a health leader. She's a busy mom with 2 kids. She's an ER doctor, emergency room doc. She's in charge of quality for the hospital system. She's a busy lady, very, very busy during this vaccine rollout. Last night, we were talking about, remember when you were a homeroom mom? She was class mom 1 day a week. And she was like, oh, I remember it very well. But when the boys were little, it was a priority. She felt that even with all her many, many responsibilities, she's having an event today and may not be able to attend. She usually is where I am just to check in and support one another, right? But she said, she's doing a health equity and disparity program. And she checked in the night before like a good accountability partner. So what did she do? Plan ahead. Hey, I may not be where I'd like to be, but it's not for a lack of interest in trying. So she planned ahead. She declined my event. Perhaps she may be here. She decided when it was worth her time, right? She said, now that the boys are older, they've got different types of activities, and mom being around isn't as cool. So, when she was then, she said, I was cutting construction paper. It wasn't high yield back then. It was high yield for them back then to have family time, and mom was there when cupcakes were passed around. But as they got older, the priority will shift. So she decided to redistribute her time.
Now, I absolutely love that. The idea of planning ahead, of kind of catering your activities to the members of your family that you're trying to connect with, and then surrounding yourself with amazing people to support those things. And that, again, that fits perfectly into your CREATE acronym of connection, of reflecting, of evaluating, having an action plan or an accountability partner to help you do that action plan, and then having time and remembering the importance of your time and the value of your time and being empowered. So absolutely love that. We have a great question that came in from Jimmy in Baltimore. He's asking about the question of weathering and like what is the idea of weathering and how that can affect how we respond to the challenges and things around us. And if you could talk a bit about how that idea of weathering affects your health and how can we protect ourselves from that concept?
I am no psychologist, but I know one thing for sure. When you look through history, your elders would be so upset with you right now. When we were in the Great Depression, when we walked 20 miles up the hill, when we went through insert problem, insert story, they would laugh at us. You can call it what you like, but the traumas, let's just address the bottom line. The traumas of the past and the present, we need to really figure out what is in the way, what is in the way of our future and our health, and have a clear mission. So let's take a step back. Before you create, it's a good idea to make sure your reflection step is deep enough. I think we stay on the surface and we don't look at what is really wrong. Some of us are overworked and burned out, and our health is at risk as a result because we are not saying no to things that eventually you pay the price. Doesn't matter what it is. My mom, sorry, mom, loved Pepsi. She used to love the stuff. But over time, little by little, incrementally, she had to start making some changes. It started showing up in little ways until they weren't little anymore. And her dentist said something, and her tummy doctor said something. And eventually she realized, okay, I can't sit and sip this soda. And worse, I can't go to aerobics class, jazzercise, back in the day, and just do what I want without consequences. So the best things we can do to protect ourselves, once again, is to prioritize and also say no to things that are blocking our goals. We're not taking full ownership of what's getting in the way of where we want to be. And we say, we're busy. I call us the busy bees. We're busy bee. We're very busy. Who's guilty? Come on, you guys, be honest. Who's busy, but it's not on mission? I spent some time on the mission because if I look here, it says, okay, what is the problem? Raise awareness and see how it's, are you ready for this part? Impacting my quality of life. So oftentimes the way to protect from it, Jimmy, in Baltimore, is for us to decide what the heck is killing us in the first place. And it's not always COVID. Some of it's our crazy job with no boundaries. You're getting messages at 3 a.m. and 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. You heard it from my accountability partner. She decided what day, how long, and how often to protect her time, but also to protect her family time. And you also heard, maybe not the end of the other story, but my friend with the 4-year-old who kind of shocked her, she made changes immediately. When she saw the problem and she saw the effect of it, she immediately realized she had to reprioritize. And she's done an amazing job since, which is why she was able to tell me the story without crying. Yes.
Absolutely. And I love the idea of reflecting, because reflecting is so important, um, in both our personal lives, but also our professional lives. And it causes you to be vulnerable. And a lot of people don't like to reflect because you have to think about what have I may have done not the best in the past, and what can I do to be better. A comment that came in a little bit earlier from Chuck, I think really kind of talks to this is, and this is actually a quote from Martin Luther King: "It is a cruel jest to tell a bootless man to pull himself up by his bootstraps." So again, when we're thinking about how we relate to others out there in that world, making sure that we're reflecting and really looking at that. So whether it's we're looking at other family members like, why can't you be better? Also looking at the world for that as well. Again, what options? So we have a great question from Brenda in Chicago, because really, I think everyone on this call, no matter what your career is or things, you definitely need to, we all need a coach. We always all need somebody that can kind of lift us up and support us. But are there any options that are out there that can give us some of those supports and some of the things that you're mentioning, whether it be health related or related to our mental health, that are low cost options? Because again, people on this chat with us today have all different backgrounds.
Here's some, a lot of things run through my mind. It's a beautiful question, Brenda. Thank you so much for joining us here. It's great to have everyone on this call because it's part of the ecosystem that we're creating for Movement is Life, right? We are being the catalyst for change. So everyone should pull up a chair to the table and see what we can do. So thank you for being here. I would say that I am a bibliophile. I love books. And I was a child that my parents would give me. I had a library card, right? The library card was it. Okay. And it's a resource. To this day, you can still go to the library or go digitally and rent a book, use it for a period of time, get that information you want out of it and give it back. So there's resources today than more than ever before. So there's podcasts, they're free. Movement is Life, they have a podcast, right? Plug, right? And then also we have the library. The reason I say that is because we oftentimes forget that really everything you really want to know is probably in a book. And we have gotten so far away from with the internet. We used to think that knowledge was the barrier. Remember, we talked about barriers and we thought, oh, education, we're going to get our kids educated and they won't have the problems we have. A lot of times it's getting it, organizing it, and then taking one bite-sized item and saying, until I develop this habit, not just skimming the surface, ladies. Sir, you need to not skim the surface. So we want to create a habit. So the CREATE acronym is so that we can decide and then make it a habit. So if we're in the habit of reading, if we're in the habit of using our library and other resources in the local community, I still use my library. I have a library card. And then we start to implement those ideas from those wonderful books that we have. Anything you could possibly want to know from a coach is in a book. What do you think? I got half of this stuff before I became a certified coach. I had to read it in the book and then implement, get myself an accountability partner and get to moving. So when I wanted to walk, one of my best friends I met walking, taking a break in medical school. We would walk before class and kind of get the juices flowing. So a lot of it is being in position with people, just reaching out and asking. How about we ask more? Can I just address that briefly?
Mhm. Absolutely.
So many of us don't like to feel vulnerable. And I warned you, the winner's triangle is about vulnerability as number one. Many of us don't ask. You have an expert right next to you. If I had a knee pain or a joint problem, I would call Dr. Huff. You know what I'm saying? I would not be shy. So sometimes asking someone who's achieved, write this down as part of the plan, reflect, right? Ask them to reflect. What made you successful? What could I do to get started? And what resources would you recommend? Ask the person who's achieved the goal, and they're happy usually to give you the next couple of steps.
Oh, thank you so much. That was a great answer, because Brenda, you're not the only one. We're always looking for great opportunities. And I am also a card carrying member of our local library. So that's a great also, too, we have another question from Dr. Felicia Monique from Houston. And I think that she actually hits on something that's a great point. We talked a lot about aligning our mission and making sure our mission is front and center. Well, that mission can change in different stages of our lives as we evolve as individuals, and it can change based on outside factors, such as the things that we're facing now. Can you talk a bit about how to change or evolve your missions as the seasons of your life change?
I love this question, and I actually know that physician. Yes, I see you. Thanks for coming. uh, she's a great example, and so is our Brenda in Chicago, right? They're asking the right questions. So I think sometimes we're a dog with a bone. Think of it that way. We get our mind wrapped around what could be or should be. We make a decision, and we don't like to stop and reflect. We don't like to be wrong, and we don't like to change direction. And change, I kind of told you, we can turn that into opportunity when things change. So, an example would be there are people selling face shields right now because there's a pandemic. There are people selling masks right now. Whole organizations just changed everything and started selling something new when the opportunity arose. So, I was on one of my favorite websites looking for, a gift for someone. And I saw that they had like 30 different masks. But this is a luxury brand. And even Chanel, like, what in the world? So everybody's taking, so they didn't change their mission, but they sure did pivot. And I'm recommending that the pivot may have to be based on today. So every single week until we get out of this pandemic, we may have to sit down on a Saturday. I like Saturday because it gives you a break on Sunday. Regroup and give yourself a time of day each week. All right, Brenda, this is for you. You said you wanted some coaching. Let's go. I imagine you have your pen ready and your notebook ready. All my clients, boy, they have a binder, okay? Get that out. Look at what went well this week. Reflect. Use the CREATE acronym. Connect with the family members that you haven't called in a while. Maybe once a month you sit down and do that. You look at what went well this week and you pivot your time, your plan, how you invest your resources we talked about, time, money, energy, health, and you shuffle the deck and put things that have been neglected at the top. It can't stay that way forever. You've gotten in a habit trail that now has shifted your priorities around. Let's put it back on a wheel and rotate it. So, no, every week you don't nail it. But if every week you took that neglected area and maybe addressed it, eventually you'd be on that wheel of fortune, right?
Absolutely. That I think that's a great point, because many times people feel that you have to constantly evolve your mission, but really it's a pivot, because that mission many times is your core values. I would like to just briefly circle back to Miss Brenda in Chicago, because I failed to mention that Movement is Life actually has other opportunities, especially in cities across the country, including Chicago, where we actually have a program called Operation Change. And Operation Change actually can address some of the concerns further that you may have, or ways of making yourself even better, because it is a group of women on the south side of Chicago, mostly African American women, who meet together over the course of 18 weeks. And it's a free program. And in that, we do have some coaching opportunities in the small groups setting. And we address your health. We address mental and physical health, as well as how to build plans out moving forward. So if that's something any of you all are interested in, that's something we can kind of circle back to at the end, or you can reach out to Movement is Life to our website.
I love it. I will say, go ahead, go. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Dr. Toni.
I got excited because, I know the weather. I used to live in Chicago, Miss Brenda. I used to live there, and I can tell you it can be a little daunting in the winter. I love Chicago, but mainly summer. Okay. One of the things I'll say, I'm also a certified personal trainer. And it's because I just love to know things and I love to help people and I love to get together and do community projects. So, one of the things I'll say is, there are a lot of apps right now and a lot of orgs right now offering things that are virtual. I know Peloton has a 60-day trial that might create a new habit for you, what kind of get you through some of these winter months. I know that National Public Health Week is coming, and the National Public Health, the APHA, American Public Health Association, they have a full program, January through April, get you through the winter, right? Where you can connect and try to do your steps. And on those warmer, more hospitable days, you can maybe get some walking in on your way to that library we talked about. So there's a lot out here. Looking it up in the community is super helpful, but sedentary lifestyle is such a risk factor by itself. It's so important that we remind each other, even though things are going on outside, we need to keep our health as number one.
There is just such a strong connection between mental and physical health, and that connection is spiritual wellness. That actually leads into an excellent question that we've had from Sonia, who asked, Dr. Toni, you are super focused. Where do you go for strength and inspiration when that well starts running dry for yourself?
Oh man, yeah, I have a list. I always have a list. And I think it goes back to the Felicia question. I love to wrap things in a bow because it's an ecosystem. We mentioned that in our discussion. Think of things in the circles, the human needs matrix that we showed in a circle. It all goes together. There's not any compartments, right? I believe that we have a lot of opportunity right now, and it's a matter of our perspective. So a lot of it is just planning, a lot of it is connecting, a lot of it is asking, and I think we're on our way. So I'm very excited to just tell you that I ask. I have several coaches. I became a trainer because I hired one and he moved away. So I said, well, who's going to train with me at 5 a.m.? And all the other trainers said, not me. 5 a.m.? She's crazy. So I became a National Academy of Sports Medicine trainer because I hired help. I didn't know what I was doing. I became more knowledgeable. So sometimes you get a coach, sometimes you call a friend, sometimes you join a group. I've joined several over the pandemic, even. And I think if you have a particular interest and pursue it, there's a lot available online so you can connect with people to learn. One of my aunts she teaches people how to sew. That's a skill set that's getting lost in some circles, and crochet. And so I think picking your values, picking your interests, picking your priorities, and then seeking people who have the knowledge, have the skill set, and they have what you're looking for, which is a result. They've figured it out. People will tell you exactly what resources to go get. So I go to my family, I go to my spiritual guides, and I go to my resources online because I feel like online or even in the community centers, there's a lot going on. I miss my Zumba class. I do, but at least it's online now. And even my mom does online Zumba. So we still have ways to connect with people.
It is so important to keep your cup full. And I think that's what you're getting at. It's just whatever you do, you have to make sure you keep that full cup. There's a great comment from Monica Davis, and she says that the combo is priceless. Thank you, Monica. We appreciate that. And she states that her takeaway is not to avoid my needs because I am one of those people who is leaned upon greatly. And I think that is just so, so key because all of us, whether we're in a healthcare professional or outside of healthcare in other professions, many of us as leaders are the people that everyone else leans on. Could you briefly, as we kind of close out, talk about the importance of, again, realizing that you're in control of what happens to you and the importance of stating boundaries when you're thinking of that control? I know that's a whole nother talk and I'm giving you a brief bit of time, but if you could kind of, as we close out, I think that's something really important that we could kind of keep in our minds as we're protecting our peace and finding calm in this chaos.
Wow, these questions are great, and it just gives me chills at the top of the year. To hear these questions come through and take control is super important. I'm going to ask you. I think I almost want to pose a question to the audience to just kind of ponder as you move on with your day here. What happens if I stop? And what happens if I'm not here? If you stop doing it, what happens? And I know you're catastrophizing already. It's not, you think if I don't rescue them, if I don't help them, what will happen? If I don't show up, the world will end. No, it won't. It's so important that we take control of the idea that rescuing others or overworking, it breaks you. And then one day, as one of our friends who was asking questions was saying, is like, you're weathered, you're broken, you're weary, and now you're ineffective, but all that you were working towards and working for is at risk. So if you were serving the community, uh-oh. And I know what happens when you believe that you can trade and sacrifice for success. It's not true. I have a TEDx about it, how to overcome the martyr mindset. We don't want to be martyrs because what happens to them? They die. So I want us to remember to be the catalyst for what? Change. Be a champion for change, be a champion for action, and be a champion whose mission is clear. And if you need to tune it up, that's fine. But we know that whatever you take control of, create a plan for, you will rise.
Thank you so much, Dr. Toni. I think that is a perfect place for us to close out. I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling motivated. I'm ready to go and bring some more calm and order to the chaos of the world. Again, if you're interested on more information about Movement is Life or Dr. Toni, we have some information for you that should be popping up on your screen shortly. We will have replays of this webinar, and please keep an eye out because we'll have more webinars, more podcasts, hopefully with one with Dr. Toni coming up soon, and also other opportunities where we can discuss how to be moving more, how to eliminate health disparities, and how to have a more calm and productive life. So again, thank you all so much for your time. Thank you, Dr. Toni, for your time and for your words of wisdom. You all have a wonderful day and a wonderful, peaceful week.